Cash is a four-letter word. Where do you get it if you're a small or medium-sized enterprise these days? Well, if you're smart, you'll ask for advice from the European Investment Fund. And joining us today from the European Business Summit in Brussels is Richard Pelly, and you're the Chief Executive, so thank you for being with us.
It's a pleasure. Good morning.
What challenges are you facing today in securing transactions and basically securing or debt for SMEs in Europe? Because you don't hand them the money, you help them get the money.
We have a mandate to cover all the European Union countries and the accession countries with support for equity investment in small businesses and debt investment through instruments like guarantees and other forms of structured finance. Your question about how do the SMEs get to their support, their new working capital facilities, their cash, is through their banking network, which we are stimulating and catalyzing the lending of by taking some of the risk with those banks. So we have capacity, we have capital of our own, we have mandates from from national governments and from the European Union to do that stimulation, that catalysis of bank lending. But it's tough. It's tough right now. There's a deep crisis going on. There's a lot of uncertainty.
Beefing up what might be a venture capital market here, because right now everybody looks at bank credits rather than venture capital in Europe.
Well, there's two really big dimensions to what we do, and I think it's worth highlighting that on the venture capital side, that's our really long-term core business, where we are the cornerstone of European venture capital and have been for 12 or 15 years. This is a young industry. European VC is let's say 12, 15 years old on the continent. But this cornerstone concept is one where basically, again, through a broad portfolio of investment in funds, as a fund of funds that then invest in the underlying companies, we're able to stimulate new investment. We're able to support new fund management teams to go and do new things in higher risk areas of technology finance or some of the newer growth businesses in Europe. Right now, we try and catalyze and encourage other investors to come beside us, and there's a bit of a shortage of that. That's why there's a crisis right now.
You think it'll get better in 3 to 5 years?
It will. There's a cyclical effect. We're right at the bottom of a cycle. Actually, just after the dot-com boom, there was a similar trough in the availability of new capital for venture initiatives, high technology, and other forms of riskier investment. But it came back, and I think that if we fill the gap consistently, with the sort of support that is let's say provided quickly and effectively, then I think that we can encourage the private sector investors, not just institutions, that's pension funds and so on, but also big corporate venture investment back into the market.
What about microfinance, or is that too small for you?
It's not actually, and I'm glad you give me an opportunity to talk about it, because we have a new program which has been negotiated with the European Commission called Progress Microfinance. This is a program of 200 million to support microfinance institutions, some of them specialized subsidiaries of banks, but a lot of them independent institutions emerging in Europe, both in Central and Eastern Europe, but also in Western Europe, who are focusing on the unbanked, the rather more deprived elements of society to stimulate with very small ticket loans to stimulate economic activity.
We're hearing a lot here at the summit and out there as well in the economy. We need innovation and entrepreneurs, and fine, okay, now but how do you find the money for them? And this sounds like it's...
Well, micro entrepreneurs are all over the place. And actually, I think there's a statistic that at least a third of companies that are set up or entities that are registered in some shape or form are registered by those who are unemployed. People have their back to the wall, but guess what? That's generating innovation and some form of risk-taking, which we need to support. And at the moment, the microfinance and microcredit industry in Europe, as opposed to Bangladesh or India or somewhere else, is actually very underdeveloped because there's been an assumption that the banking market will cover it. But it started in Central and Eastern Europe before accession of some of these countries, and it's beginning to move into Western Europe because there's a realization there's a need for it here.
Let me just switch horses a little bit here and look at the Greek crisis. Is there any role that your organization plays in that?
This challenge in Greece and spillover effects into other countries does intensify the need for us to provide support, but we're doing it through really two mechanisms. One is we have already dialogue with Greek banks, and not just Greek banks, but with banks across the whole of the Union, but in particular Greek, where we're discussing the structures to give them support, that's risk support for their small and medium-sized lending portfolios, which enables them to refinance some of those portfolios, potentially get some capital relief or additional liquidity as a result of our support. This is a form of synthetic securitization, which is a specialty of the EIF. So that would be an example of our core business for Greek banks, but we're also mobilizing some structural funds which have been allocated to us by the Greek government to finance SME loans, microloans, and some venture capital in Greece as well.
Let me just end by asking you how you see the European investment funds work in the next couple of years. You must be looking at some changes as well.
Sure. I mean, it's a fascinating period because really an institution like us has to really have its impact in a counter-cyclical way. So we're right in the trough right now, and so our activity is intensifying. We've doubled our activity levels and therefore our impact in a period of 18 months or something like that since the economic crisis started to bite. Now, this is going to be required for the next 3 to 5 years. We're not out of the woods yet, and so if you look at historic cycles, the SMEs, they survive until a certain period in the cycle, and then they start defaulting and falling over, and then they take some time to recover again. We've got to be there to help that recovery.
Thank you very much, Richard Pelly, for being with us on INSEAD Knowledge.
Good to be here. Thanks a lot.